Lucas Hayes pulled his coat tighter against the biting wind as rain lashed the streets of Brookhaven. From behind the glass doors of the office building where he worked as a night security guard, he watched the storm intensify. The lobby was quiet, dimly lit, with only the faint hum of the air conditioner breaking the silence. It was a monotonous routine, but Lucas couldn't complain. At least it paid the bills. Barely. The building itself was a relic of the past, with creaking elevators and flickering lights that struggled to keep up with modern standards. Tonight, however, none of that mattered. The storm outside was more menacing than usual, casting an eerie atmosphere over the deserted streets. Lucas tried to shake off the unease creeping up his spine, reminding himself he had seen worse weather during his years on the job. At first, he thought it was his tired mind playing tricks when he noticed a figure stumbling on the sidewalk across the street. The rain blurred the glass, but there was no mistaking the faint outline of someone struggling to stay upright. Squinting, Lucas leaned closer. The figure, a man, frail and elderly, suddenly crumpled to the ground, his cane skittering away into a puddle. Lucas's heart raced. His training and common sense screamed at him to stay put. The rules were explicit: never leave your post. Yet, as he stared at the motionless form of the man, another thought surfaced, one louder than fear or obligation. He needs help. Without a second thought, Lucas grabbed his raincoat and bolted through the lobby doors. The cold rain hit him like a wall, soaking him instantly, but he pressed on. By the time he reached the man, he was shivering violently, his thin clothes offering little protection against the elements. "Sir, can you hear me?" Lucas knelt beside him, gently shaking his shoulder. The man groaned faintly, his face pale and drawn, but he didn't respond. Lucas quickly scanned the street, spotting a covered awning a few feet away. Wrapping his arms around the man's frail frame, he half carried, half dragged him to shelter. Once under the awning, Lucas set the man down gently, pulling off his own jacket to drape it over him. "It's going to be okay," he assured, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. "I'll call for help." He fumbled for his phone, but before he could dial, the man stirred, coughing weakly. His watery blue eyes opened, and he looked at Lucas with a faint smile. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the rain. Lucas felt a surge of relief. "Hang in there, sir. Help is on the way." He flagged down a passing taxi, explaining the situation to the driver, who reluctantly agreed to take the man to the hospital. Lucas watched as the taxi disappeared into the storm, a sense of accomplishment warming him despite his soaked clothes. When he finally returned to the building, his relief was short-lived. Waiting for him in the lobby was his supervisor, Mr. Hendricks, a man notorious for his zero-tolerance policies. "Where the hell have you been, Hayes?" Hendricks barked, his face red with fury. Lucas tried to explain, recounting the events in detail, but Hendricks cut him off with a dismissive wave. "I don't care what you did. You abandoned your post. Do you know how much liability that creates for us? Consider yourself lucky if you still have a job in the morning." The reprimand stung, but Lucas held his ground. "I couldn't just leave him there to die," he said firmly. Hendricks scoffed. "This isn't about what you think is right. It's about doing your job." With that, he stormed off, leaving Lucas standing in the middle of the lobby, drenched and disheartened. By the time his shift ended, Lucas had received the news. He was fired. Walking home in the early morning drizzle, Lucas replayed the night's events in his mind. Doubts clawed at him. Could he have handled it differently? Yet deep down, he knew he wouldn't change a thing. He had done the right thing. Now, he just had to live with the consequences. Lucas woke to the sound of dripping water. The leaky faucet in his tiny apartment's kitchen had become a constant reminder of his situation, a minor inconvenience he had learned to live with. This morning, however, the rhythmic sound felt heavier, like a ticking clock counting down to something inevitable. He rolled over on the lumpy couch that doubled as his bed and stared at the cracked ceiling, the events of the previous night flooding back. Fired. The word lingered in his mind like a bad taste. He had lost jobs before, but this one hurt differently. This time, he wasn't let go because of downsizing or poor performance. He had been fired for following his conscience, for putting humanity above protocol. Yet, as noble as the thought sounded, it didn't change the reality he now faced. Lucas swung his legs off the couch and ran a hand through his disheveled hair. The small kitchen table was cluttered with unopened bills, each envelope a stark reminder of how precarious his finances were. Rent was already overdue, and the utilities weren't far behind. The paycheck he was supposed to receive at the end of the week wouldn't come now, leaving him scrambling for answers. After a quick shower, cold as the hot water had been cut off weeks ago, Lucas dressed and grabbed his coat. Despite the storm having passed, the day was gray and overcast, the kind of weather that mirrored his mood. He had no time to dwell on self-pity. Job or no job, he still needed to eat and keep a roof over his head. He spent the morning trekking across Brookhaven, visiting one business after another. Cafes, convenience stores, even construction sites, anywhere he thought might be hiring. The responses were painfully familiar. "We're not looking right now." "Sorry, we just filled that position. We'll keep your application on file." By midday, his feet ached and his stomach growled in protest. The last meal he could afford had been dinner 2 nights ago, and the granola bar he had stashed in his coat pocket wasn't cutting it. Lucas sat on a bench outside a small park, watching people bustle by with purpose, their lives seemingly untouched by the struggles weighing him down. Despite the gnawing frustration, he reminded himself why he was here. He had made a choice to help a stranger in need. That man, whoever he was, might still be alive because of Lucas's decision. And even though it cost him his job, that truth brought a flicker of comfort. As the afternoon wore on, Lucas's hope dwindled. The rejections seemed to blur together, each one chipping away at his confidence. He trudged back to his apartment building, the setting sun casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. When he reached his door, the sight waiting for him made his stomach drop. A folded piece of paper stuck to the peeling wood. He didn't need to open it to know what it was. His landlord had been threatening eviction for weeks, and now it seemed the man's patience had run out. Lucas unfolded the notice with trembling hands, the words confirming his fears. He had 5 days to vacate. Stepping inside, Lucas closed the door behind him and slumped against it. The apartment was dark, save for the faint glow of the streetlights outside. He tossed the eviction notice onto the cluttered table and sank into the lone chair. Doubt began to creep in. Had he made the wrong choice? Would it have been so bad to stay at his post and let someone else help that man? His mind swirled with questions, each one heavier than the last. But as he sat there in the dim room, another thought broke through the noise, a quiet but resolute belief. Doing good is never wrong. Lucas repeated the words to himself like a mantra, holding onto them as tightly as he could. The world might not reward kindness, but he refused to let that stop him from living by his principles. Even in the face of hardship, he couldn't let go of the conviction that helping others mattered. For now, though, survival came first. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. Tomorrow, he would try again, knock on more doors, fill out more applications. Somewhere out there, an opportunity had to exist. Until then, Lucas would make do, as he always had. He leaned back in the chair, the weight of exhaustion pulling at his eyelids. His last thoughts before sleep claimed him were of the elderly man under the awning, smiling faintly and whispering, "Thank you." Lucas didn't know what the future held, but he held onto that moment as a reminder of why he had chosen this path, no matter how steep it now seemed. The night was unnervingly quiet. Lucas sat at his small kitchen table, the faint buzz of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the building's old pipes, the only sounds breaking the stillness. The eviction notice lay among the pile of overdue bills, a glaring reminder of his crumbling reality. He had spent the day chasing any job lead he could find, but nothing had panned out. Now, the weight of his situation pressed down on him like a suffocating fog. He stared out the window into the darkened street below, his thoughts a tangle of regret, fear, and determination. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking time he felt slipping away. Lucas closed his eyes, willing sleep to come, but rest eluded him. The storm inside his mind raged on, even as the world outside remained eerily calm. A sudden knock at the door shattered the silence. Lucas froze, his heart pounding. It was nearly midnight, far too late for visitors. He stayed motionless for a moment, wondering if he had imagined the sound. Then it came again, 3 deliberate knocks, each one louder than the last. Cautiously, Lucas rose from his chair. He moved to the door, his footsteps light, and peered through the peephole. On the other side stood a man he didn't recognize. Dressed in a sharp black suit, the visitor looked wildly out of place in the dingy hallway of Lucas's apartment building. His expression was unreadable, his posture composed. "Who is it?" Lucas called through the door, his voice steady but wary. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket and retrieved a white envelope, holding it up so Lucas could see. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm and measured. "This is for you." "For me?" Lucas frowned. He didn't owe anyone anything important enough to warrant a midnight delivery. "Who sent you?" The man smiled faintly but didn't elaborate. "It's for you," he repeated. Something about the man's demeanor unnerved Lucas, but curiosity outweighed his caution. He unlocked the door and opened it just enough to reach out and take the envelope. The man handed it over without a word, and then, without waiting for a response, turned and walked down the hall. "Wait," Lucas called after him, stepping into the hallway. "What is this? Who sent you?" The man didn't look back. He disappeared down the stairwell, leaving Lucas standing there in confusion. After a moment, Lucas retreated back into his apartment, shutting and locking the door behind him. He stared at the envelope in his hands, its pristine surface at odds with the chaos of his surroundings. There was no name or return address, just his own, written in elegant handwriting. Carefully, he slid his finger under the flap and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. Unfolding it, Lucas read the handwritten note. "Meet me at Cafe Haven tomorrow at 10 a.m. Ask for Victor. Your kindness hasn't gone unnoticed." Lucas read the note twice, then a third time, his brow furrowing with each pass. He didn't know anyone named Victor, and the note gave no other clues. His thoughts immediately went to the elderly man he had helped 2 nights ago. Could this be connected? Setting the note down, Lucas's mind raced with possibilities. Was this some kind of elaborate scam? A cruel prank? Or was it something else entirely? He spent the rest of the night turning the situation over in his head, caught between suspicion and intrigue. By the time dawn broke, he had made up his mind. Whatever lay behind that meeting, Lucas needed to know. He didn't have much to lose anymore, and if there was even a chance that it could lead to an opportunity, he had to take it. With the note tucked carefully into his coat pocket, Lucas prepared for the day ahead. His nerves buzzed with a mix of anxiety and anticipation as the clock ticked closer to 10 a.m. Whoever Victor was, Lucas would find out soon enough. Lucas arrived at Cafe Haven just before 10, the note folded neatly in his pocket as though it were a talisman warding off his doubts. The cafe was tucked into a bustling corner of Brookhaven, its warm, inviting glow contrasting with the chilly morning outside. The windows were fogged slightly from the heat inside, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air. Stepping in, Lucas hesitated, his eyes scanning the room. It was busier than he expected, filled with a mix of office workers grabbing their morning caffeine, friends chatting over pastries, and students hunched over laptops. A soft hum of conversation blended with the faint hiss of the espresso machine, creating an atmosphere of comfort. Lucas didn't feel comfortable. His nerves were wound tight, every muscle in his body ready for something, though he wasn't sure what. He approached the counter where a barista greeted him with a smile. "Can I help you?" she asked cheerfully. Lucas paused, suddenly feeling self-conscious. The note's instructions felt almost absurd now, like a line from a bad detective novel. "I'm looking for someone named Victor." The barista nodded, her smile widening as though she had been expecting him. "Right this way." She stepped out from behind the counter and gestured for Lucas to follow. He did, his heart thudding in his chest as she led him to a corner table near the back of the cafe. Seated there was a distinguished man in his late 50s, his tailored gray suit and polished demeanor making him stand out among the casually dressed patrons. His silver hair was neatly combed, and his sharp blue eyes fixed on Lucas as he approached. "You must be Lucas," the man said, rising to extend a hand. His voice was smooth, authoritative, but warm. Lucas shook his hand, feeling a bit out of his depth. "Yes, I'm Lucas. And you're Victor?" "Victor Ashford," the man confirmed with a nod. "Please, sit." Lucas slid into the chair across from him, unsure what to expect. He wasn't used to sitting in places like this, let alone across from someone who looked like he belonged in the glossy pages of a business magazine. Victor studied him for a moment, his gaze steady but not unkind. Then he leaned back slightly, his posture relaxed. First, let me say that it's a pleasure to meet you. I've been looking forward to this. Lucas frowned, his curiosity mounting. You said in the note that my kindness hadn't gone unnoticed. What did you mean by that? Victor smiled faintly. The elderly man you helped the other night. That was my father, Edward Ashford. Lucas's breath caught. The memory of the rain, the frail man's whispered thank you, flashed through his mind. Your father, he echoed, his voice trailing off. Victor nodded. You didn't know who he was, yet you risked your job to help him. My father told me everything. The way you ignored the rules, how you gave him your jacket, even flagged down a cab to make sure he was safe. That kind of selflessness is rare, Lucas. For a moment, Lucas didn't know what to say. He had done what anyone with a conscience would, or so he thought. Hearing Victor describe it as something extraordinary felt strange. I just did what I thought was right, he said finally. And that's exactly why we're here, Victor replied, his tone sincere. My father is recovering well, thanks to you. He insisted that I meet you in person to express our gratitude. Lucas shifted in his seat, uncomfortable under the weight of the praise. I didn't do it for recognition, he said. I couldn't leave him there. Victor's smile widened, as though Lucas's response confirmed something he already knew. Which brings me to why I asked you to meet me. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. Lucas stared at it, a flicker of suspicion returning. What's this? Victor gestured for him to open it. An opportunity. If you'll allow me, I'd like to offer you a position at my security firm, Ashford Protective Services. Lucas blinked, certain he had misheard. You're offering me a job? Victor nodded. Not just any job. You'll find that the salary is significantly higher than what you were making before, with benefits that include housing assistance, health insurance, and opportunities for advancement. We're always looking for people of integrity, and you've already proven yourself in that regard. Lucas hesitated, the weight of the offer almost too much to process. He had spent the past 24 hours spiraling into despair, convinced he was out of options. Now, out of nowhere, this man was offering him a lifeline. But why? Lucas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Because people like you deserve a chance, Victor said simply. And because my father taught me that when someone does good in the world, it's our responsibility to pay it forward. Consider this our way of saying thank you, and a chance for you to rebuild. For a long moment, Lucas stared at the folder, his mind racing. It felt too good to be true, yet Victor's sincerity was undeniable. Finally, he met Victor's gaze, his voice steady but filled with emotion. What's the catch? Victor chuckled softly. No catch, Lucas. Just one request. When you're in a position to help someone else, don't hesitate. Keep the kindness going. Lucas swallowed hard, his emotions threatening to overwhelm him. He hadn't realized how desperately he needed this moment, a chance to believe that doing the right thing could lead to something good after all. With trembling hands, he opened the folder and began to read. Lucas stared at the documents in the folder, his hands trembling slightly as the magnitude of the moment settled over him. The offer was as generous as Victor had described. A base salary 3 times what he had earned before, comprehensive health benefits, housing assistance, and a clear path for growth within the company. It felt surreal, like a dream he might wake up from at any moment. Victor sat patiently, watching Lucas with a calm and steady demeanor. He gave Lucas the space to process, his expression neither rushed nor expectant. The din of the cafe hummed in the background, a distant soundtrack to the life-changing decision unfolding at the corner table. Why me? Lucas finally asked, breaking the silence. His voice was filled with both awe and doubt. There are plenty of people out there who could probably do this job better. Why would you take a chance on someone like me? Victor leaned forward slightly, clasping his hands on the table. It's not just about skill, Lucas. Skills can be taught. What can't be taught is integrity, courage, and a genuine desire to do what's right. My father saw all of that in you during those few minutes you spent helping him. He said you reminded him of the goodness people are capable of, and that's not something we take lightly in my family or my business. Lucas's throat tightened at the sincerity in Victor's words. He thought about the night he had helped Edward Ashford. He hadn't known who the man was, nor had he expected any reward. He had simply followed his instincts, even when it cost him everything. Now, sitting across from Victor, he realized that the consequences of that choice weren't as final as they had seemed. "But I've never worked in a place like yours before," Lucas said cautiously. "I don't have any special training, no experience with high-level security work." Victor smiled, his confidence unwavering. "That's where we come in. If you accept this offer, you'll undergo a comprehensive training program tailored to develop the skills you'll need. The program is rigorous, but based on everything I've seen and heard about you, I have no doubt you'll excel." The word rigorous sent a flicker of doubt through Lucas. He thought about his current physical condition, the long hours he had spent sitting behind a desk during his security shifts. Could he handle the demands of such a program? And what if he failed? Victor seemed to sense his hesitation. "Lucas," he said gently, "you've already proven you have what it takes to succeed in this line of work. The technical skills are just tools. The foundation is your character. And from where I'm sitting, that's solid." Lucas swallowed hard, his emotions warring within him. The offer represented everything he needed: a chance to rebuild his life, to escape the crushing weight of debt and despair, to stand on stable ground for the first time in years. But it also felt too big, too overwhelming. Victor leaned back slightly, his gaze softening. "You don't have to decide right now," he said. "Take the weekend to think it over. But let me leave you with this. Opportunities like this don't come around often. And when they do, they can change everything. I believe in second chances, Lucas. The question is, do you?" Lucas looked down at the folder again, his vision blurring slightly as the weight of Victor's words sank in. A second chance. It was all he had been praying for, and here it was, delivered in a way he never could have imagined. "Okay," Lucas said finally, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions within him. "I'll do it. I'll take the chance." Victor's smile widened, a genuine warmth radiating from him. "You won't regret it, Lucas. Welcome to Ashford Protective Services." The two men shook hands, and for the first time in weeks, Lucas felt a glimmer of hope take root in his heart. As they finished their meeting, Victor handed Lucas a detailed schedule outlining the next steps, including his training start date and arrangements for temporary housing near the training facility. Lucas accepted it with a mix of gratitude and disbelief, still trying to wrap his mind around how quickly his life had shifted. Leaving Cafe Haven, Lucas stepped out into the bright sunlight. The air felt crisper, the city somehow more alive. For the first time in what felt like forever, he walked with purpose, his shoulders straighter and his steps lighter. The road ahead was daunting, but Lucas was ready to face it. He didn't know what challenges the training program would bring. But one thing was certain: he had been given a chance to rewrite his story, and he wasn't about to waste it. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Lucas had experienced before. True to Victor's word, the training program at Ashford Protective Services was rigorous, demanding both physically and mentally. It was a far cry from the monotonous desk shifts he'd once endured. The training facility itself was impressive. Situated on the outskirts of Brookhaven, it spanned acres of state-of-the-art infrastructure. It was equipped with simulation rooms, obstacle courses, and classrooms for theoretical learning. For someone like Lucas, who had never been part of an environment so advanced, walking into the facility on his first day felt like stepping into another world. Lucas was assigned a small but comfortable dorm on site, complete with a modest kitchenette and a view of the sprawling training grounds. It wasn't luxury, but it was clean, secure, and most importantly, a step up from the crumbling apartment he had recently vacated. The change in his living conditions alone gave him a sense of stability he hadn't felt in years. The first few days were overwhelming. The instructors were no-nonsense professionals, many of whom had backgrounds in law enforcement or military service. Lucas quickly realized that his new colleagues came from all walks of life: former police officers, military veterans, and even some civilians like himself who were seeking a fresh start. The physical training was grueling. Lucas found himself running laps at dawn, climbing walls he thought were impossible, and performing drills that pushed his endurance to the limit. There were moments when his body screamed at him to quit, but each time he thought about giving up, Victor's words echoed in his mind. You've already proven you have what it takes. Then there was the mental component. Lucas attended daily workshops on crisis management, situational awareness, and conflict resolution. These classes often involved scenarios where trainees had to make split second decisions under pressure. Though challenging, Lucas found the exercises strangely rewarding. For the first time, he felt as though he was growing, pushing past his limits and discovering strengths he hadn't known he possessed. What surprised Lucas most was the camaraderie among the trainees. Despite their diverse backgrounds, everyone shared a sense of purpose and mutual respect. On tough days, when Lucas struggled to keep up with the pace, it was his peers who encouraged him, offering advice or a pat on the back that kept him going. One of his closest allies was Marcus, a former firefighter with an easygoing demeanor and an endless supply of jokes. Marcus quickly took Lucas under his wing, helping him navigate both the physical and mental challenges of the program. "Man, you've got heart," Marcus said one evening after a particularly grueling obstacle course. The two of them sat on a bench overlooking the training grounds, drenched in sweat but grinning. "That's half the battle in this job. The rest? That's just muscle memory and staying cool under pressure." Lucas laughed, though his muscles ached with every movement. "Feels like my heart's about the only thing keeping me going some days." "Trust me, that's enough," Marcus replied. "The rest will come." As the weeks turned into months, Lucas began to see the transformation in himself. His stamina improved, his reflexes sharpened, and his confidence grew. The instructors who had once seemed impossibly demanding began to take notice of his progress. One instructor, a stern but fair woman named Sergeant Blake, pulled Lucas aside after a simulation exercise one day. "You've got potential, Lucas," she said. "You're not just following orders. You're thinking ahead, making decisions like a leader. Keep that up, and you'll go far here." Her words stayed with Lucas, filling him with a quiet pride. For so long, he had felt invisible, just another face in the crowd, another cog in the machine. Now, for the first time, he felt seen. The training culminated in a final evaluation, a comprehensive test that combined all the skills they had learned over the months. It was an intense, day-long exercise involving simulated emergencies, high-pressure scenarios, and physical challenges designed to push each trainee to their limits. When the day ended, Lucas was exhausted but exhilarated. He had given everything he had, and though he didn't know if it was enough, he felt proud of how far he had come. 2 days later, Lucas received his results. He had passed with flying colors. The instructors praised his dedication, resilience, and natural instincts, qualities they said couldn't be taught. That evening, Victor Ashford called to personally congratulate him. "I knew you'd succeed, Lucas," he said, his voice warm with approval. "Welcome to the team. This is only the beginning." True to his promise, Victor had arranged for Lucas to move into a furnished apartment closer to Ashford Protective Services headquarters. The day Lucas stepped into his new home was a turning point. The apartment wasn't lavish, but it was clean, modern, and completely his. For the first time in years, Lucas felt a sense of permanence, a foundation upon which he could rebuild his life. As Lucas settled into his new role at Ashford Protective Services, he realized that he wasn't just working a job. He was part of something bigger. His responsibilities gave him purpose, his colleagues treated him with respect, and his future felt brighter than it ever had. Still, at night, when the city lights glimmered outside his window, Lucas often thought about the choice he had made on that rainy night, to help a stranger in need, despite the consequences. That moment had set everything in motion, proving that even the smallest acts of kindness could create ripples far beyond what he had imagined. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, Lucas knew one thing for sure. He was ready to face it. A month into his new role at Ashford Protective Services, Lucas had finally begun to feel a sense of stability that had eluded him for years. His days were filled with purpose as he applied the skills he had honed during training. Whether coordinating with his team on high-profile security assignments or handling smaller tasks with precision, Lucas approached every duty with the same dedication that had brought him this far. But as fulfilling as his new life was, Lucas couldn't shake the lingering memory of the elderly man he had helped that stormy night. Though Victor had told him how much his actions had meant to the Ashford family, Lucas still felt a pang of curiosity. How was Edward Ashford doing now? Had he fully recovered? That question was unexpectedly answered one evening when Lucas received a call from Victor. It was late, and Lucas had just settled into his apartment after a long day. Seeing Victor's name on the caller ID, he answered with a mix of surprise and curiosity. Victor, Lucas greeted, his voice warm but slightly cautious. Good to hear from you. And good to hear from you, Lucas, Victor replied, his tone as polished and measured as always. But there was something else there, too. A note of excitement, perhaps even anticipation. I hope you're settling into your role nicely. From what I've heard, you're exceeding expectations. Thank you, Lucas said, a touch of pride in his voice. It's been a challenge, but a rewarding one. I'm glad to hear that, Victor said. But that's not the only reason I'm calling tonight. My father, Edward, would like to meet you. Lucas froze, the words hanging in the air. He had assumed his brief encounter with Edward Ashford was behind him, a moment in time that had set the stage for everything that followed. The idea of meeting the man now, after everything that had happened, felt both exciting and daunting. He's been asking about you ever since he learned you were part of our team, Victor continued. He's in much better health now, and he'd like the chance to thank you in person. Lucas hesitated, unsure of what to say. Gratitude filled him at the thought of Edward wanting to meet, but it was mixed with nervousness. What would he say to the man whose life he had unknowingly changed? I'd be honored, Lucas finally said, his voice steady despite the rush of emotions. Excellent, Victor replied, clearly pleased. Let's arrange for you to visit the Ashford family estate this weekend. It'll be an informal gathering, just you, my father, and a few close family members. I'll send a car to pick you up. Lucas agreed, and after exchanging a few more details, the call ended. As he set his phone down, he found himself staring out the window, his mind racing. The Ashford estate. It was a name that carried weight in Brookhaven, synonymous with power and prestige. And now he was being invited there as an honored guest. The days leading up to the visit passed in a blur. Lucas couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension. He spent his free time researching the Ashford family, learning more about their legacy and the businesses they had built. The more he read, the more surreal the upcoming meeting felt. Finally, the day arrived. A sleek black car arrived at Lucas's apartment promptly at 10 a.m., just as Victor had promised. The driver, a courteous man in a crisp suit, greeted Lucas with a warm smile before opening the door for him. As the car wound its way through the city streets and into the more affluent outskirts of Brookhaven, Lucas couldn't help but marvel at the sprawling estates and manicured lawns. When they pulled up to the Ashford estate, he was struck by the sheer grandeur of the property. The mansion, with its elegant architecture and sweeping drive, exuded both history and wealth. Victor was waiting for him at the front entrance, his demeanor as composed as ever. Lucas, he said, extending a hand. Welcome to the Ashford estate. Thank you, Lucas replied, shaking Victor's hand and doing his best to keep his nerves in check. Victor led him through the grand foyer, where the polished marble floors and ornate chandeliers spoke of generations of refinement. The air was filled with the faint aroma of fresh flowers, and the walls were adorned with portraits of the Ashford family, their faces radiating a timeless dignity. They entered a sunlit sitting room where Edward Ashford was waiting. The elderly man looked markedly healthier than he had the night Lucas found him, his posture upright and his eyes bright with vitality. He rose from his chair as Lucas entered, a warm smile spreading across his face. Mr. Ashford, Lucas began, his voice tentative but respectful. None of that, Edward interrupted, his tone genial. Call me Edward, and please come in. Lucas stepped forward, feeling Edward's firm handshake as they met. There was a strength in the older man's grip that belied his age, and his eyes sparkled with gratitude. Lucas, Edward said, his voice filled with emotion. I've been looking forward to this day. What you did for me that night, I can't thank you enough. You saved my life. Lucas felt a lump form in his throat. I was just doing what anyone would have done, he said modestly. Edward shook his head. Not everyone would have made the same choice, especially at such a cost to themselves. You lost your job that night, didn't you? Lucas nodded, surprised by how much Edward knew. And yet, you didn't hesitate, Edward continued. That kind of selflessness is rare, and it's something I'll never forget. Victor joined the conversation, his tone lighter. Father insisted we bring you here today. He wanted to express his gratitude properly. The meeting continued over tea and light refreshments, the conversation flowing easily as Edward shared stories of his recovery and his newfound appreciation for life. By the time Lucas left the estate, he felt more than just honored. He felt like part of something larger, a connection forged by an act of kindness on a stormy night. Unbeknownst to Lucas, this meeting was only the beginning of what the Ashfords had planned for him. The invitation to the Ashford estate had been a profound moment for Lucas, but nothing could have prepared him for the events that unfolded during his visit. He left that initial meeting with Edward Ashford deeply moved by the elderly man's gratitude, but it wasn't long before he realized that the Ashford family's generosity extended far beyond words. A week after their meeting, Lucas received another call from Victor. This time, the invitation wasn't for a casual visit, but a formal dinner hosted in Lucas's honor. Victor explained that Edward wanted to express his thanks more publicly and introduce Lucas to the extended Ashford family. Lucas hesitated at first, unsure of how he would fit into such an extravagant event, but Victor's reassurances put him at ease. "Lucas," Victor said over the phone, his tone kind but firm, "this is more than just a dinner. It's an opportunity to celebrate the values you embody: selflessness, courage, and integrity. My father believes that people like you are rare, and he wants others to know your story." Touched by Victor's words, Lucas agreed. The night of the dinner arrived, and a car once again came to pick him up. This time, the drive felt different. Lucas's nervousness was tempered by a sense of quiet anticipation. He had come to trust the Ashfords, especially Victor, and he felt a deep responsibility to honor the gesture. As the car pulled up to the estate, Lucas was greeted by the sight of glowing lights illuminating the grand facade of the mansion. The driveway was lined with luxury vehicles, and guests in elegant attire were already making their way inside. Lucas, dressed in the tailored suit Victor had insisted he wear, took a steadying breath before stepping out of the car. Inside, the estate was transformed into a scene of opulence. The grand ballroom had been adorned with crystal chandeliers, floral arrangements, and long tables set with fine china and silverware. The guests, a mix of family, friends, and business associates, mingled as soft classical music played in the background. Victor greeted Lucas near the entrance, his expression warm and welcoming. "You made it," he said, clapping Lucas on the shoulder. "Barely," Lucas joked, his nerves still evident. Victor chuckled. "Don't worry, you'll do just fine. My father is eager to see you again." Lucas was soon ushered into the heart of the gathering, where Edward Ashford was seated at the head of a long table. The older man rose as Lucas approached, his face lighting up with a smile. "Lucas," Edward said, extending his hand, "I'm so glad you could join us tonight." "It's an honor to be here, Mr. Ashford," Lucas replied, shaking his hand firmly. Edward motioned for Lucas to sit beside him, and as the dinner began, the room's attention naturally shifted toward the guest of honor. Throughout the meal, Victor and Edward took turns recounting the story of that fateful night when Lucas had come to Edward's aid. Though Lucas tried to downplay his actions, the Ashfords made it clear how deeply they valued his courage and compassion. But it wasn't until the end of the meal that the true extent of their gratitude was revealed. Edward stood, raising a glass to quiet the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Tonight, we are gathered here not only to share a meal, but to celebrate a man who reminded me, and all of us, what it means to care for one another. Lucas didn't know who I was when he stopped to help me that night. He didn't care about titles or wealth. He saw a human being in need, and he acted." The room was silent, every eye fixed on Edward. "And so," Edward continued, turning to Lucas, "we want to do more than just thank you with words. Victor and I have discussed this at length, and we've decided to offer you something tangible to mark this new chapter of your life." At that moment, Victor stepped forward, holding a small box. He placed it in front of Lucas and nodded for him to open it. Inside were a set of keys. Lucas stared at them, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "These are the keys to your new apartment," Victor explained, his voice calm but purposeful. "It's fully furnished, located in a secure neighborhood, and it's yours, Lucas. A fresh start, free of worry about rent or stability. The room erupted into applause as Lucas sat frozen in his seat, overwhelmed by the gesture. Tears pricked the corners of his eyes as he turned to Edward and Victor, his voice breaking. I don't know what to say. This is too much. Edward placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder, his grip firm but reassuring. It's not too much, he said. It's the least we can do for someone who's given us so much. The rest of the evening passed in a blur for Lucas. Though the Ashfords' gift was life-changing, what stayed with him even more was the sincerity behind their actions. They hadn't treated him like a charity case or a transaction. Instead, they saw him as an equal, someone worthy of respect and kindness. As the night drew to a close and Lucas prepared to leave, Edward pulled him aside for a private moment. Lucas, Edward said, his tone serious yet warm, this is just the beginning for you. I see great things in your future, not just because of your abilities, but because of your heart. Never lose that. I won't, Lucas promised, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside him. As he left the estate that night, the keys to his new home in his pocket, Lucas felt a profound sense of gratitude. The Ashfords had given him more than just a place to live. They had given him hope, validation, and a chance to rebuild his life on a foundation of kindness and integrity. And as the car carried him back through the quiet streets of Brookhaven, Lucas made a silent vow to himself. Someday, he would pay this kindness forward. The keys to his new apartment jingled softly in Lucas's pocket as he stood before the entrance to his new home. The building was nestled in a peaceful, tree-lined neighborhood, a far cry from the dilapidated complex he had once called home. With a mixture of anticipation and disbelief, he unlocked the door and stepped inside. The apartment was breathtaking. Warm sunlight filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the sleek, modern furniture and polished hardwood floors. The open layout gave the space a sense of grandeur, and every detail, from the fresh flowers on the dining table to the framed artwork on the walls, spoke of thoughtfulness. Lucas wandered from room to room, taking in the spacious kitchen, outfitted with state-of-the-art appliances, the cozy living room, complete with a plush sofa and a flat-screen TV, and the bedroom, where crisp white linens covered a queen-sized bed. A small card on the nightstand caught his attention. It read, "To Lucas, a man who reminds us all of the power of kindness. May this home be the foundation of a brighter future. The Ashford family." Lucas sat on the edge of the bed, the card trembling slightly in his hands. He had spent so long fighting to survive, moving from one dead-end job to another, that the idea of having stability, true stability, felt almost foreign. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope without restraint. With a secure place to call home, Lucas began to thrive. His new role at Ashford Protective Services offered not only a generous salary, but also a sense of purpose. Each morning, he reported to the sleek headquarters of the company, where he was greeted warmly by colleagues who respected and valued his contributions. The work itself was challenging but rewarding. Lucas quickly became known for his dedication and his ability to stay calm under pressure. His training sessions were intense, pushing him physically and mentally, but he embraced them with determination. Over time, he built a reputation as one of the most reliable and resourceful members of the team. Outside of work, Lucas found joy in small things he had once taken for granted. He cooked meals in his new kitchen, savoring the simple pleasure of having a fully stocked pantry. He explored the neighborhood, discovering local parks and cafes where he could relax and recharge. And for the first time in years, he slept soundly, free from the constant worry of eviction or financial ruin. One evening, Lucas was invited to a team gathering hosted by Victor at a trendy rooftop lounge in Brookhaven. The event was a mix of professional networking and casual celebration, with live music, gourmet food, and a stunning view of the city skyline. As Lucas mingled with his colleagues, he couldn't help but notice how far he had come. A month ago, he had been struggling to find work, unsure of where his next paycheck would come from. Now, he was part of a respected team, surrounded by people who saw him not just as a worker, but as a person of value. During the evening, Victor pulled Lucas aside for a private conversation. "You're doing incredible work, Lucas," Victor said, his tone sincere. "The team has been singing your praises, and I can see why. You've become a vital part of Ashford Protective Services. Thank you." Lucas replied, feeling a swell of pride. It means a lot to hear that. Victor smiled. I think my father was right about you. You have the potential to lead, Lucas. With your dedication and integrity, I wouldn't be surprised if you rise through the ranks faster than anyone else. Lucas was humbled by the compliment, but it also sparked something deeper, a sense of responsibility. He wanted to honor the faith the Ashfords had placed in him by giving his best not just at work, but in every aspect of his life. As weeks turned into months, Lucas's life continued to stabilize and grow. He began setting goals for himself, from advancing in his career to giving back to the community that had shaped him. One of the first things he did was reconnect with an old friend, Mark, who had been a source of support during Lucas's toughest times. Over coffee at a local cafe, Lucas shared the story of his journey, from losing his job to finding unexpected kindness in the Ashford family. Mark listened intently, his expression shifting from concern to amazement. Lucas, this is incredible, he said. You've been given a second chance, and you're making the most of it. I'm proud of you, man. Hearing those words solidified Lucas's resolve to keep moving forward. He knew he had been fortunate, but he also knew that he had worked hard to seize the opportunities that came his way. Inspired by Victor's words about leadership, Lucas began mentoring new recruits at Ashford Protective Services. He took the time to share his knowledge and experiences, emphasizing the importance of empathy and integrity in their work. Being good at your job isn't just about skill, he told a group of trainees during one session. It's about the choices you make when no one's watching. Those choices define who you are. The trainees listened intently, and Lucas couldn't help but feel a sense of fulfillment. He was beginning to see how his journey could inspire others, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond himself. Settling into his role and his new life, Lucas began to dream of what the future might hold. He thought about the possibilities that lay ahead, advancing in his career, building lasting relationships, and finding ways to contribute to the community that had given him so much. For the first time in a long time, Lucas felt not just stable, but truly hopeful. And though he didn't yet know what challenges or opportunities the future might bring, he was ready to face them with the same kindness and determination that had carried him through his darkest days. Unbeknownst to Lucas, the Ashford family had more plans for him, plans that would further transform his life and show him the true power of paying kindness forward. It had been 3 years since Lucas first stepped into his new life, thanks to the Ashford family's generosity. His transformation was nothing short of remarkable. Rising quickly through the ranks at Ashford Protective Services, Lucas now held a leadership position. But it wasn't just his professional success that defined him. It was his unwavering commitment to the principles of kindness and compassion that had once lifted him out of despair. On a brisk autumn afternoon, Lucas found himself walking through Brookhaven's bustling downtown after a long day at work. The city, with its mix of historic charm and modern skyscrapers, had become his home. As he passed a small coffee shop, he noticed a young man sitting on the curb, head in his hands. The man's clothes were worn, his shoes scuffed, and beside him sat a backpack that looked like it held everything he owned. Lucas paused. The scene stirred a deep empathy within him, reminding him of his own struggles not so long ago. He approached the young man slowly, not wanting to startle him. "Hey there," Lucas said gently. "You okay?" The young man looked up, his eyes weary. "Not really," he admitted, his voice tinged with hopelessness. "I just don't know what to do anymore." Lucas crouched down to meet his gaze. "Sometimes it feels like there's no way forward," he said, his tone calm and reassuring. "But I can tell you from experience, there is." The young man hesitated before responding. "You don't understand. I've lost my job, I can't pay my rent, and I don't have anywhere to go. No one cares." Lucas smiled faintly. "I do. And I know what it's like to feel like the world's turned its back on you." He sat down beside the young man, ignoring the curious glances of passersby. "I've been in your shoes. Let me help." Lucas learned the young man's name was Kevin, and as they talked, Kevin revealed a story all too familiar. Bad luck, a few mistakes, and a lack of support had left him on the brink of losing everything. Lucas listened intently, offering his full attention without judgment. "You're not alone in this," Lucas said when Kevin finished. But to get back on your feet, you need a starting point. Let's figure that out together. Lucas took Kevin to a nearby diner where they shared a simple meal. Over coffee and sandwiches, Lucas began to lay out a plan. He told Kevin about community resources, job programs, and housing assistance in Brookhaven. But beyond the practical advice, Lucas shared something more valuable: his own story. "I got through the darkest time of my life because someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself," Lucas said. "You've got potential, Kevin. Don't let today's struggles make you forget that." Kevin listened, his expression softening. "Why are you doing this for me? You don't even know me." Lucas's answer was simple: "Because someone did it for me, and because I believe in paying kindness forward." The encounter with Kevin reignited something in Lucas, a desire to do more. Over the following weeks, he kept in touch with Kevin, checking on his progress and offering encouragement. Kevin found temporary shelter and began applying for jobs, his confidence growing with each small victory. But Lucas didn't stop there. He began volunteering at a local nonprofit that provided resources for people facing homelessness and unemployment. Using his own experiences as a foundation, Lucas started mentoring others, sharing practical advice, and inspiring hope. At Ashford Protective Services, Lucas also introduced new initiatives focused on community outreach. Under his leadership, the company partnered with local charities to provide job training programs for at-risk individuals. Lucas firmly believed that businesses had a responsibility to uplift the communities they operated in, and his passion quickly inspired others. Victor Ashford noticed Lucas's efforts and couldn't have been prouder. During a meeting, he pulled Lucas aside. "You've turned this company into more than just a security firm," Victor said. "You've made it a force for good. My father would be thrilled to see the impact you're having." Lucas smiled, his gratitude evident. "I'm just trying to follow the example you and your father set," he replied. "I've been given so much, and it's only right to give back." Kevin's story was just the beginning. With Lucas's help, he secured a stable job and an affordable place to live. Months later, Kevin stopped by Lucas's office to thank him in person. "I don't think I'd have made it without you," Kevin said, his voice filled with emotion. Lucas shook his head. "You made it because you worked hard and believed in yourself. I just helped you see what was already there." Kevin hesitated before speaking again. "I want to do what you did for me, help someone else who's struggling. I don't have much yet, but maybe I can make a difference." Hearing those words, Lucas felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Kevin's decision to pay kindness forward marked the start of something larger, a chain reaction of compassion that had the potential to reach countless others. As Lucas continued his work, he realized that his greatest success wasn't his professional achievements or even his personal stability. It was the ripple effect of kindness he was creating, one person at a time. He started a mentorship program at Ashford Protective Services, inviting employees to share their skills and experiences with those in need. The program quickly gained traction, with volunteers stepping forward to help. Lucas also began speaking at schools and community events, spreading the message that small acts of compassion could have life-changing consequences. Through it all, Lucas remained grounded. He never forgot where he came from or the people who had helped him along the way. And as he watched the impact of his efforts grow, he felt a deep sense of purpose. His journey had come full circle, not because he had reached the top, but because he was lifting others as he climbed. Lucas's days became a testament to the values he had embraced: integrity, compassion, and the belief that every individual deserved a chance to succeed. His life, once riddled with uncertainty, was now defined by stability and meaning. But as he thrived in his career and his efforts to help others, Lucas found that his purpose extended far beyond the walls of Ashford Protective Services. Late one evening, as Lucas was finishing paperwork in his office, his phone buzzed with a call from Victor Ashford. It wasn't unusual for Victor to reach out, but there was something different in his tone this time, an air of excitement mixed with gravity. "Lucas," Victor began, "I wanted to let you know about something my father and I have been working on. We're establishing a foundation to help people facing the same challenges you once did: homelessness, unemployment, and lack of opportunity. We'd like you to play a leading role." Lucas leaned back in his chair, momentarily stunned. "Me? Yes, you, Victor said warmly. You've lived it, Lucas. You know what it takes to overcome those struggles, and you've already proven that you can inspire and uplift others. This foundation will be about creating real change, and we can't think of anyone better to guide its mission. Lucas felt a mix of humility and pride. I'd be honored, he said after a pause. But this is a huge responsibility. Are you sure I'm the right person for this? Victor chuckled. Lucas, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the right person isn't the one with all the answers. It's the one with the heart to find them. And that's you. Over the following weeks, Lucas and the Ashfords collaborated to develop the foundation's goals and structure. Named the Beacon of Hope Foundation, the organization aimed to provide resources for individuals struggling to rebuild their lives. The foundation would offer job training programs, affordable housing initiatives, and mentorship opportunities. But Lucas insisted on adding another critical component: emotional and mental health support. People need more than just tools, he explained during a planning meeting. They need someone to remind them that they're worth the effort. The work was demanding, but Lucas threw himself into it with the same passion that had guided him since the beginning. He traveled to communities across Brookhaven, meeting with local leaders, social workers, and people in need to understand the challenges they faced. Each conversation deepened his resolve to create a lasting impact. Despite the long hours and the weight of his responsibilities, Lucas found moments of personal growth along the way. He reconnected with his family, sharing the story of his journey and the lessons he had learned. One afternoon, during a visit to his younger sister, Clara, she said, "You've changed so much, Lucas. It's like you've found exactly where you're meant to be." Lucas smiled. "I think I have. But it's not just about where I am. It's about who I've become. And I owe that to the people who believed in me when I couldn't see a way forward." Clara looked at him thoughtfully. "You've become that person for others. Do you realize how powerful that is?" The conversation stayed with Lucas, reinforcing his sense of purpose. The Beacon of Hope Foundation's launch event was held in the heart of Brookhaven, drawing a crowd of community leaders, media, and individuals eager to support the cause. Lucas stood at the podium, feeling a surge of emotion as he looked out at the faces of those who believed in the foundation's mission. "When I lost everything," Lucas began, his voice steady but heartfelt, "I thought I was alone. But one act of kindness changed the course of my life. That act taught me something powerful. Kindness is never wasted. It creates ripples, touching lives in ways we may never fully see." He paused, letting the words sink in. The Beacon of Hope Foundation is about creating those ripples. It's about believing in people, even when they've stopped believing in themselves. Together, we can turn struggle into strength and despair into opportunity. The audience erupted in applause, and Lucas felt a profound sense of fulfillment. In the months that followed, the foundation quickly became a beacon of hope for countless individuals. Lucas worked tirelessly, mentoring staff, meeting with beneficiaries, and sharing stories of resilience and triumph. One day, he received a handwritten letter from Kevin, the young man he had helped years ago. "Lucas, I'm writing to tell you that I've started mentoring others the way you mentored me. I found a young woman struggling to get back on her feet, and I helped her find a job and a place to stay. Watching her rebuild her life has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my own. Thank you for teaching me what it means to pay kindness forward. Kevin." The letter brought tears to Lucas's eyes. It was a reminder that his efforts were creating a legacy far greater than he had ever imagined. As Lucas continued his work, he realized that his journey wasn't just about finding stability or success. It was about becoming a force for good in the world. Every life he touched, every opportunity he created, reaffirmed the values that had guided him from the start. Lucas often reflected on the night he had chosen to help Edward Ashford, an act that had seemed small at the time, but had changed the course of his life. That single moment had taught him that the simplest choices could have the most profound impact. Now, he was living proof of the ripple effect of kindness, and he was determined to ensure that those ripples would continue for generations to come. Years passed, and Lucas's life became a beacon of inspiration, not just in Brookhaven, but far beyond its borders. The Beacon of Hope Foundation flourished under his leadership, touching countless lives and earning widespread recognition for its innovative approach to uplifting the underserved. Yet, for Lucas, the accolades and success were secondary. His focus remained steadfast, creating a legacy built on the simple, transformative power of kindness. One crisp spring morning, Lucas received a call from Victor Ashford. His voice carried an air of excitement. "Lucas, there's something my father and I want to share with you," Victor said. "Can you join us at the estate tomorrow evening?" Curious, Lucas agreed. The Ashford estate had always been a place of warmth and gratitude for him, and the thought of seeing Edward and Victor again filled him with anticipation. When he arrived, the estate was bathed in the golden glow of sunset. Edward Ashford, now in his 80s but as vibrant as ever, greeted him warmly. "Lucas," Edward said, his eyes twinkling, "you've turned a simple act of kindness into something extraordinary. You've inspired us to do more than we ever thought possible." Victor stepped forward holding a leather-bound book. "This," he explained, "is a record of the lives you've changed through the foundation. It's filled with letters, stories, and testimonials from people who found hope because of your work." Lucas took the book, his hands trembling slightly as he opened it. Each page told a story of someone who had faced despair and found light thanks to the foundation's efforts. Tears welled in his eyes as he read the words of gratitude and hope. "We wanted you to see the ripple effect you've created," Edward said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've proven that one person can truly make a difference." That evening, Lucas sat in the Ashfords' garden, the book resting on his lap as he gazed at the star-strewn sky. His mind traveled back to the rainy night when he had stepped out to help Edward, defying orders and risking his job. At the time, it had seemed like a simple decision, an instinctive act of compassion. Yet, it had been the spark that ignited an incredible journey, transforming not just his life, but the lives of countless others. Lucas thought of Kevin, now thriving and mentoring others. He thought of the young mothers, veterans, and students who had found opportunities through the foundation. Each story reminded him that the power of kindness was immeasurable. He realized that his greatest achievement wasn't the foundation itself, but the way it had inspired others to carry the torch of compassion. As Lucas entered his late 40s, he began to think about the future of the foundation and his role in it. He had always believed that leadership was about empowering others, and it was time to prepare the next generation to carry the mission forward. He identified promising leaders within the foundation, individuals who shared his values and passion for helping others. Lucas mentored them personally, instilling in them the same principles that had guided him. One of those individuals was a young woman named Elena, who had once been a beneficiary of the foundation. Elena's journey mirrored Lucas's in many ways. She had faced hardship, but had risen above it with determination and support. Her resilience and empathy made her a natural leader. "You're ready to take this forward," Lucas told Elena during one of their mentoring sessions. "Never underestimate the impact of what we do here. It's not just about programs or initiatives, it's about giving people hope." Elena nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I won't let you down, Lucas." "I know you won't," he said, smiling. One quiet evening, Lucas visited the small park near his old apartment, the place where he had often sat during his darkest days, searching for answers. He found a bench and sat, reflecting on how far he had come. A group of children played nearby, their laughter filling the air. Lucas smiled as he watched them, feeling a profound sense of peace. He thought of the countless lives that had been touched because he had chosen to act on that rainy night so many years ago. A young couple approached him, carrying their infant in a stroller. The man hesitated before speaking. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you Lucas? From the foundation?" Lucas nodded. "That's me." The man's face lit up. "I just wanted to say thank you. My wife and I got our start through one of the foundation's housing programs. We're doing well now, and it's all because of the work you started." Lucas stood and shook the man's hand. "I'm glad to hear that. You've done the hard work. Never forget that." As the couple walked away, Lucas felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The legacy of kindness wasn't about him. It was about the countless lives that had been changed and the chain of compassion that would continue long after he was gone. Lucas's story became one of hope and inspiration, a testament to the idea that even the smallest acts of kindness could create ripples with far reaching effects. Through his work and the people he touched, Lucas ensured that the legacy of kindness lived on. And as he walked home that evening, beneath the same sky that had once seemed so distant, Lucas knew he had found his true purpose, not just in building a better life for himself, but in helping others believe they could do the same. Lucas's story is not just a personal journey of transformation, but a living testament to the power of kindness and compassion. From a struggling security guard, Lucas rose not only through his own perseverance, but through his unwavering belief in the value of helping others and showing love. Every step of his journey is a reminder that sometimes even the smallest acts of kindness can spark profound change. From saving a stranger on a rainy night, Lucas opened a new path, not just for himself, but for the community, igniting hope in those who had been living in darkness. Looking back, Lucas realized that his actions were never about becoming famous or earning respect, but about proving that kindness can change the world. By giving, he not only transformed his own life, but left a lasting impact on countless others. More importantly, he showed us a vital lesson. Sometimes the greatest changes come from the smallest actions. And when we help others, we are the ones receiving the most priceless gift: happiness and meaning. Though his journey was fraught with hardships and challenges, Lucas found his true purpose and value in life: giving love, offering help, and believing in the goodness of humanity. And it is through his actions that he created a legacy that will continue to live on for generations. For every kind act is a seed planted for a brighter future. Lucas's story, a man who changed his life through kindness, will forever inspire those who believe that we can change the world, as long as we start with a single act of goodness. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Lucas's story. We hope his journey of kindness and transformation has inspired you, just as it has inspired us. If you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share it with others who might need a little reminder of the power of compassion. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories that remind us all of the incredible impact we can have on each other's lives. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us continue to share these uplifting stories with even more people. Thank you again for watching, and remember, kindness can change everything.